peoples of the British Isles owe their Christian roots to a few causes. One of them is Gregory the Great, who in 596 AD sent about 40 monks from Rome, with a man named Augustine at the head of them. Reputedly, the prompt for him to send Augustine was seeing slave children who appeared angelic to him, but turned out not to be angels but angles. These 40 monks settled in Canterbury, converting the Anglo-Saxon tribes to Christianity. Later, the connections with the centre of the Western Church were strengthened by the coming and going to Rome of the leaders, merchants and pilgrims of these Christian peoples of Britain. When these pilgrims from Britain came to stay in Rome, they'd come to an area of the city, the Vatican Hill, just behind me, to a place called the Schola Saxonum, also known as the Schola Anglorum. Amongst the visitors were bishops and archbishops. Archbishops would come to receive the pallium here. One visitor was Bishop Wilfrid of York. Kings would come here too, kings of Wessex and Mercia, kings of the Danes, and they come here to visit the shrines of the saints, especially St. Peter's and St. Paul's. From where we're standing, we can see Castel Sant'Angelo and St. Peter's. And between them is the area that's called the Borgo, an ancient name which probably comes from a Germanic word. And this is the area that King Ine, when he came to Rome, he found a number of English people living, and so he had a house for himself built here. And he had the Schola Saxonum built. He's interestingly probably the originator of the collection known as Peter's Pence, a collection for the papal charities. And in the 9th and 10th century, some of it was used to support English pilgrims staying in the Borgo. Other nationalities had scholas here. They were places for pilgrims to be supported and educated. Some Englishmen who stayed here served in local militias too. A fortified citadel, it became a home from home for English in Rome, containing different sorts of accommodation. People in the UK now might be surprised to know that in the 9th century, there were more Anglo-Saxon visitors in Rome than any other nationality. There were rich and poor, men and women. Some came and stayed, and the Schola expanded to include inns, libraries, and meeting rooms. The Church of Santa Maria of Sassia, or of the Saxons, was built by Pope Leo IV in the 9th century, and the papacy funded and maintained it. the 11th and 12th centuries, a change came. Crusades diverted to the Holy Land most of the people who would have headed to Rome. There were constant power struggles in Rome. Pilgrimages came to a stop, and English people made pilgrimage to safer destinations like Canterbury, St David's in Wales, or Santiago de Compostela instead. The Schola declined to a pitiable state without funds and was closed at the beginning of the 13th century. The buildings that remained were taken over by the Confraternity of Santo Spirito, and it became a hospital, which today is the oldest still functioning hospital in Europe. The church was rebuilt as the Church of Santo Spirito in Sassia. In 1300, pilgrimages began again to Rome with the first great Christian Jubilee. And by later in the 14th century, there were English pilgrims arriving in Rome. But it was no longer a safe place for them. They hadn't got the place to stay. And so the next part of our story has brought me to a different location that provided the solution to this problem. Can I ask you who you are and where we are?
My name's Father Stephen Wang. I'm the rector of the Venerable English College, which is a seminary here in Rome, and we're standing in one of the many beautiful chapels here in the college seminary.
And how long has the Venerable English College been here?
Well, we've got two parts to our history. We've been a seminary forming men for the priesthood since 1579, but our history goes back 200 years further to our foundation as the English Hospice, meaning a house of hospitality, that was founded here in Rome on this site in 1362. So we have an extraordinary history going back to the first days of the hospice.
And why was it necessary to build a hospice here in 1362?
There's a particular reason the date was important. Just as we're celebrating a Jubilee now in 2025, there was a great Jubilee in Rome in 1350, and lots of English pilgrims, English and Welsh pilgrims, came to Rome, but they found that there was not somewhere safe for them to stay here. Many of them got sick, many of them died, many of them struggled. So in the years after that great Jubilee, a group of business people here in Rome from England said, we want to establish a house which is like a centre for pilgrims, so that English and Welsh pilgrims coming here would have somewhere that they could land, they could feel at home. They were given free board and lodging for a week if they could prove that they were from England and Wales. And it just made the whole experience of being on pilgrimage in Rome as an English person, a Welsh person, much safer and more secure.
And were there some particular things that pilgrims would have been doing during their time in Rome?
It was a very interesting time to be a pilgrim back then in the 14th century, because when the college was founded in 1362, the Pope was not living in Rome. He was in Avignon in France. So Rome was a centre of pilgrimage, but it wasn't quite the same as we think of today, as when so many people come to Rome in order to meet the Pope. But they came to Rome, as pilgrims do today, to see the holy places, to visit St. Peter, St. John Lateran, St. Paul's, St. Mary Major's, and also not to forget that it was a kind of penance to come on pilgrimage then. There was no EasyJet or Ryanair. It was a hard journey to get here, and it was a risky journey. So you were making a huge commitment of time and effort to come on pilgrimage, to show your love for the Lord, your love for the church, and especially your love for the St. Peter and St. Paul, on whom this city is founded.
So this place is really significant for the English, for the Welsh, for people of the British Isles.
Oh, this college is hugely significant for England and Wales and for the Catholic Church. We were the main community welcoming English and Welsh pilgrims when we were founded, and for many hundreds of years. We would have been a point of reference for people who wanted somewhere to pray, to meet others. We became a great centre of intellectual life in the early humanist period. We were the first embassy. The first English embassy to Rome would have been here in the college. And especially today, there's just a real sense that this is a place of holiness and faith. And it's lovely that in the Jubilee this year, we've had dozens and dozens of groups coming through. This week alone, we've had 8 pilgrim groups coming from schools and parishes. They come to Rome, but they want to stop in at the English college because it's so much a part of their history.
And how do the seminarians here think about the role of the seminary in that history?
I think the seminarians here are really proud of their history because they know what an important centre of pilgrimage we've been. We've been a place of hospitality, and that's part of their own faith and their commitment. They want to study and pray, but they want to welcome people as well. But also the history of the martyrs here, that, as you know, in the 16th and the 17th centuries, when the Protestant Reformation was taking place in England, it was very difficult to be a Catholic, and it was illegal to be a Catholic priest. So we have 44 priest martyrs from our college, and when the seminarians come to study here, they're very conscious of being part of that tradition.
That's fantastic to hear all of that. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Pleasure.
Appreciate
Nice
it.
to talk.